You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of sight. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the twilight zone.
All right, so most of the left bank here is done on the lower 5.0 truck intake. Most of the rough cuts, probably like on camera. There's always something that I can see better with the camera that needs to be blended in more. But you can see 5, this first turn is cut back more on the inside wall. I haven't really touched the bulge. Of course, my camera sucks at focusing where I want it. So from the top, this was cut back on the inside a bit, and a little bit here. Nothing to really be done in runner 8, except for 7 and 8, I did finally blow through to make those less offset as possible, at least in those corners. But if you're looking down from about here and you look to where that hole is, one second. Yeah, my camera just... You can see how that makes a difference if you had, like definitely like 20 thousandths more of an inch even. So I have to epoxy those. We'll probably scrape more and just give it a good mount because these are probably the largest holes, but I'm glad I broke through because I didn't know how close I really was. And because these turns are really subtle, I wasn't sure if I wanted to, but that's kind of the whole idea, is just shifting that offset, so cutting in somewhat here and then moving that to the left. Here's a lot of aluminum just from the, not in the to-go cup, and it's way larger, look. Gives you an idea, and that's just from a lot of the touch-up work finishing up the left bank, but most of the final finish is done. But I think it made a big difference when looking in the top. Of course, I didn't take any before or after. One thing I will say, even with these cheap sets of, this was a 5 or 6 set for $23 of the extended single cut burrs for aluminum, and they do pretty well, but I have worn out the egg mostly already. And then when I went back to the original ball nose I had with a deeper flute, this thing cuts aluminum like butter, so you have to be careful if you're going back and forth. But going back to this was it just made the job such a breeze, finishing up and cleaning up some of the ports. So I still have more to do on the right bank, particularly in 1, and cutting back the wall here. But I think 5 is good to go. I'll show you the outside. I'll flip it upside down first, and then I'll put it upside down. This is so tricky. there's 5. And I did bulge a little out on this and exit turn, just like I did on the first turn. And I talked about that. So obviously this is cut back enough that always ends up looking like it needs more blending when you see it on camera. But in person, that's so hard to see that ripple. But I may, before it's said and done, just even that out a little bit more. But yeah, so that's 5. That's the worst one. 6. So I didn't really do much here. I just kind of cleaned that up, but that could take a little bit more off of that wall. So before it's all done. But yeah, again, you can see if we're looking straight on how far over the center of the entry point is. So trying to move this as much as you can is what you've got to do. And here's 7 and 8. And I did mostly finish the wall here compared to 6. Obviously I epoxied it, but I never really finished blending that, whereas I started to get in a rush. But you can see a huge difference now looking above that hole. And obviously there's still some there, but you can see how much more of the center that you can see. And then again here where the hole is to our right, and obviously that can be blended a bit more, but a lot of material came off of this wall. So I'll flip it right side up. Look at it from this point, you'll be able to see more. So, but yeah, and the port exits I haven't completely finished. And that's always tricky. But the thing is, as long as you're using a metal-based gasket, if you go too large, you can always grind on the gasket itself if you're worried about overlap, I guess. But they're just kind of obnoxious to get lined up right because it depends on gasket thickness. But I guess the best way is if you're going to use a gasket maker, then put the gasket on the head and so on. But it is hard to tell exactly where it's going to land. I guess you could probe it and stuff. All right, let's flip this around. Yeah, this is actually the negative space of the tweeter pods for my van, so kind of funny. And it works well to prop this up, so. All right, so obviously they look nice and pretty from a floor view. Little stuff to get cleaned up there. And then you can see where the holes are. So we're looking at 8, 7, 6, 5. So here you can see 5, you can see how this is bulged out a little bit. I might try to blend. See, it's weird, like I said, the stuff that you can't see at the certain light, there is a ridge there. I may try to blend that down a little bit. It is also a game of burrs and angles, probably this one would be able to knock that down a little bit, angle one. I see a little ripple here, so that could be cleaned up. But again, without before and after, it's really hard to tell what's up with 5. So 6 again. This needs to come down more, just to be evened out with where the hole is. And then 7, like I said, that wall, you see how much more flush that is than 6. So now we've helped shift that quite a bit, and I didn't mic any of this, so it's just kind of like what I call voodoo. I could have, but there's no like definite numbers to where to stop. It's really just looking at what you've removed. One other thing before I forget is you'll also see there's raised casting, numbers in the casting for each cylinder number or runner number. On the left bank, you're gonna wanna just shave those down. Like number 8, it doesn't matter, but to really get enough epoxy on there, I just took the numbers right off so that it can have a nice overlap on top and kind of hug the top, especially with number 7, with the size of that one. And then obviously this side, it didn't matter either. Like number 1, I have a really nice build up here, but I still want to give it another layer and build it up. And I do put aluminum in there, but I'll switch over to look at the right bank and show what's left real quick. So I probably won't make a video again on this until it's just all done. So every time I get rambling on these little updates, this time I could be carving. Okay, so number 1, you can see where I started to kind of put grooves in there. So that wall's gonna definitely come back. 2, so the only one that doesn't get a hole is basically 3 because it's straight on, but I still open it up and we'll probably do so a bit more, just make it a little bit larger basically. But where are we? Number 4. This wall could be taken back a little bit more flush. I don't think anything needs to be done on the outside wall. So I keep putting the light in the wrong spot, but you can see changing the offset. So not a lot of work on the right bank. Basically what I got done in an hour yesterday. So here you can see where the hole is. So I'll take that back, wipe this wall down a lot more. And then again for number 1, I don't think that really needs a bulge on the outside. I don't think it's a sharp enough turn, but it's hard to say because I feel like I can take off a lot of material right here. So it ends up being a straight shot. It's not like 5 where it's like moving sideways, and then obviously the side with the hole has to come down. So yep, that's about what's left. I can finally call it a day on this thing, and then I don't even remember where I left off on the E7s, on the heads, I mean. So I want to say most of the rough cutting and exhaust stuff is done. There might be 1 left, but I'm just gonna like double check. That's why I keep notes. Let's see. So I know the stock sizes versus like where I last measured, and I'll kind of go through and check everything out. But yeah, I saw one flow bench test, and now I'm kind of bummed out because I don't know what this person's deal is, if they're deliberately skewing figures to get business for their porting, or if they made a mistake, but it may have been like way over exaggerated on the number one like front runners, like what this guy was claiming. So now I'm kind of like a little bummed out that it won't hit where I thought it was. And not that I wouldn't do this anyway, but like it's still gonna pick up significant gains, and I still think the engine's gonna hit the horsepower and torque levels where I want them and stuff. But realistically, I just kind of want to wrap this up. But you know, I didn't want to waste my time either. Like you can see a lot of bad things online in regard to doing this job. So not this, like any porting job, there's a lot of like bad info. For people that think gasket matching is porting, they'll show you, oh, we just open this up to a bigger gasket and that's porting. And that's not true at all. There was, just by me showing you some of the other stuff. And this is a simple one, and it's relatively simple. I mean, it's the same thing in a head where you're dealing with like the short turn and dog legs and stuff like that, but like valve job and bowl angle, like all of that stuff has a lot to do with it. But I'm a little disappointed, like that if I misread like what someone was picking up on these particular castings, because he's trying to like rip people off or make them think he can get more numbers out of it than this or that. So that's my own naivety, and unfortunately I don't have a flow bench, so I'm just following the best advice and trying to do like, you know, best standard job that I can on it. And then just have a nice running 5.0 basically before they ban petrol